Greetings and a warm welcome to all our viewers. This is the NADI Conversation brought to you by Asian Confluence. In this episode, we will explore the theme of sustainable cities in the Himalayan landscape. The Himalayan region, characterized by its majestic peak and rich cultural heritage, faces unique challenges and opportunities in the realm of sustainable urban development. As the population grows and city expands, there is an urgent need to rethink the urban planning and to ensure an environment resilient and sustainable and an economic sustainability city. So joining us today for this discussion are three distinguished experts. We have with us Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar. He's a former mayor of Shimla and current member of the Kerala Urban Commission. Mr. Panwar is a renowned expert on urbanization and solid waste management. Joining us is also Ms. A. Doreen. She is holding a very important position of Chief Engineer at the Department of Water Resources, Government of Meghalaya. In this conversation, ma'am will be providing insight into the importance of water management and springs in the urban areas. And then we have Mr. Pema. He is a senior urban planner and researcher at the Center for Bhutan Studies. Mr. Thinley brings both a ground level and policy level experience in the urban planning. We all are excited to have such a knowledgeable panel to discuss this critical issue. To start this conversation, I would like to invite Mr. Panwar to set the tone of this conversation and take it forward. Mr. Panwar, the stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Pradyut, and I think it's indeed a great privilege to be part and parcel of this team comprising two very eminent people, personalities, representing, the Himalayas, the northeastern part of the Himalayas, but two different countries. We have Mr. Pema, who's an urban planner, and we've already introduced him from Bhutan, and A. Doreen, ma'am, who's from Meghalaya. I had the chance of recently visiting your state, ma'am, and I can tell you, things are not too good. The way urbanization is unfolding. I thought we are the ones who've committed blunders, but unfortunately, you are going the same way. So, just recent visit to Shillong, I know. Anyway, so to set the tone, I think, Pradyut, what I'm going to do is the whole question. Let's revisit it. Why should you have the whole notion of sustainable urbanization? And what do we mean by sustainable urbanization? And why urbanization at all for us thank you. Why urbanization at all, in the mountain towns? Historically speaking, I think one must keep in mind when we talk about urbanization, not to date us back to, and that will also be a provocation to both the panelists who are here, that we are not dating back to some 5,500 years ago, when we had those urban settlements, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, that we talk about. And I think we were managing our shit and waste jolly well. I mean, in fact, better than what we are managing now in our towns across the South Asian countries, I must say, not just India or not just the mountain states. What I'm more concerned about is this whole process of urbanization that began some 2 centuries ago. And this is the form of urbanization which was led by industrialization. And we know, the basic premise of industrialization was pushing millions and millions of people out from the village commons to the cities, because it's the cities where this major hub of industrial manufacturing was taking place. So that is the classical form of, where the surplus that was getting generated from the countryside was getting absorbed in the cities, and that's how, you were providing employment, you were building cities. So that was one element of which unfortunately did not happen in India, for the simple reason because we were a colony at that time. And and historically, it's not that industrialization was preceding urbanization in the Indian subcontinent, for that matter. That's the first take that I would like to register here. The second part is that even in the Western world, or what we call the global North, the urbanization, though it was preceded by industrialization, that's how they were able to absorb the surplus that they were generating in their own nations. But at the same time, it was also the colonial loot the massive loot of the Portuguese, of the Germans, of the Brits, of the French, from different colonies, and we were part of, those colonies across the globe, that they could extract the surplus from here and then further invest in their own countries. And just to give you one small glimpse in the figure, Utsa Patnaik points out that in this span from 150 years of imperial rule in India, $45 trillion is what we have contributed from the Indian subcontinent to the British. So, their development models, their urbanization, all the buzzword about their massive infrastructure that they developed. So that infrastructure was not getting generated just because the surplus was getting created in the process of industrialization, and that's how they could unleash the tools of modernism, of urbanization, but also because of the colonial loot. Why I'm saying so? Because we in mountain towns, how do we visualize urbanization? I mean, I mean, that's how I want to, come back to our panelists here. And the third element, which is I'm just to make a passing reference. One of my famous poets, Percy Bysshe Shelley, some 2 centuries ago, wrote, and I'm talking about when they were in the process of getting industrialized or urbanized, and he writes, "Hell is a city much like London." Okay, where you have filth, where you have pollution, and all that. So there, I would not say that that is one of the forms of sustainability, but they sustained their urbanization because of A, they were preceded by industrialization. B, they had this huge colonial loot at their command, and unfortunately, we in the Indian subcontinent, I cannot comment on Bhutan because Pema Sahib, you'll have to tell us some, how the challenges that you're facing. Of course, we have a similar terrain. I'll come to that a little later. But the point is that we in the Indian subcontinent also, not just in the Indian subcontinent, but if you see in the global south, because of our integration uh, to world capitalism, was because we wanted technology. We just got independence, so we also unleashed. We tried to unleash the same path of buying big capital. Uh, uh, Intensive manufacturing technologies, but somehow it didn't succeed too much. I mean, for first 2 decades, I think we advanced a little bit, but then our urbanization in the Indian subcontinent is primarily steered or preceded by the tertiary sector, not the secondary sector, the manufacturing sector, which should have absorbed millions of people. What we are witnessing now is, and this is what we are witnessing even in the Himalayan towns, there is a massive flow of people from the countryside to the cities who are not being absorbed. And A, there is very partial employment. B, there's huge migration that is taking place because of distress migration in the countryside. So, take for example, in India, I think we have some 45 to 50% people who are living in slums. Though the slum population is not that huge in the Himalayan towns, but we can easily witness the kind of migration that is taking place, even in the mountain towns. So that's the third element I think I would like to park. The fourth point to contextualize this issue is that unlike in other parts of the country, when we are urbanizing in the mountains, there are certain dynamic processes. One of the processes, as I said, is not industrialization, and we do not even want industrialization. The demographic shifts are taking place because of major political and administrative reasons. For example, most of our towns and cities, you have Shillong, either our capital towns of the respective states or subdivision towns. So here, urbanization is a kind of linkage between the administrative and political, setup that we are witnessing. But what we're also witnessing is that we actually are copying the same model that we have in different parts of the country. And since we have an architect planner here, I would be able to tell us more about that, how you are doing in Bhutan. But in India, unfortunately, we do not have a mountain design, which is so important. And since our vulnerability is extremely high, if we go by the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, especially 6, we are in extremely vulnerable zone apart from coastal India that we talk about. So our vulnerability, as far as, because it's the youngest range of mountains, still your tectonic shifts are taking place. Mountains are still growing, and on top of that, because in the absence of any mountain topology, what we're doing is following a copy paste model. That is what I saw in Shillong. That is what is happening in Simla. That's what is happening in Srinagar. I do not know, sir, whether the RCC has actually captured the imagination of construction in Thimphu also or not, but it has completely actually devastated, most of our towns, of hilly towns. So what do you do in such a situation? So that's probably the fourth of the element. Now, if you see urban governance, now this I just want to tell our people here that we are already in the process. We recently did a conference called Parvat Manthan, where we invited mayors of the mountain towns, and I can tell you they were screaming at us because the urban governance is abysmally low. If you see the finances, uh, uh, because we have this model of finance commissions. So the devolution from the finance commissions is what we call as intergovernmental transfers. It's abysmal. It's not even 0.5% of the GDP, whereas countries like Philippines is almost 2.1%, Sri Lanka is higher than us, and of course Brazil is some 5.1%. So the governance models are also not, and the governance models are not even empowered. I mean, that's what we could gauge. So we are in the process of bringing out a financial document, or that will talk about Himalayan towns and their finances vis-a-vis our federal government and our provincial governments. So having said that, the whole point is, a, this urbanization is not the kind of but we try to copy the Western urbanization. B, it's not sustainable. See, the models we have copied either from the West or from mainland India, when I'm talking about India, are more to do with a very generic sense of urbanization, which does not address the needs of the mountain people. So, what I want both of you, because we have an engineer, we have an urban planner. Some people say it's the urban planning that has failed. Some say it's the entire political structure that has failed. Some say, like I can tell you, another big issue. I do not know, ma'am Shillong, whether I just visited. Just correct me if I'm wrong. But your 95% of liquid waste goes into the water ecosystem. I didn't see a single, sewage treatment plant. Srinagar,
Yes,
can
sir.
you Srinagar, 90% of the liquid waste goes into Jhelum, and it's all across. I mean, even Guwahati, okay, I mean, a town which has more than a million population. What are we doing? I mean, just try to imagine the circularity of this. I mean, how it is going to affect. It's going to have health hazards. It's going to have cascading problems. So where does the problem lie? Because since we do not have a political representative here, but I have served the city for 5 years, I can tell you, politically, cities are not empowered. Is it an engineering fault? Is it fault at the planning level? Or is it fault at somewhere else? Our integration to the world economy, post 90s, when we started liberalizing, we said now is the time, to get the most advanced technology. But we've seen technology is not the solution. It's just an enabler. The solution lies somewhere else. So with these opening remarks, I don't want to, you know, encroach on your time. I would like to be more democratic here, and maybe ask both of you who wants to go first. I mean, how do you perceive the whole question of sustainability? To me, if you honestly ask, I do not think I know what sustainability is, but I take it in an inverse form. I would say I know what unsustainability is. I can tell you RCC is not sustainable. I can tell you, the sewage management process is not sustainable. I can tell you the solid waste process is not sustainable. So I think I would approach the sustainability question in a very inverse format. And to me, I think there are two silver linings. The first is climate overarching framework of climate change. It's impacting the mountain towns. And the second one is any solution has to be extremely people based. It cannot be divorced from the people, and involving them in this whole process of seeking sustainable solutions.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Panwar. I I think just coming to the sustainability, I think in term in our Bhutan's case, thanks to the the small population, So because of this, we like India, we didn't come across the urban issues so soon. Now we are realizing it, and the impact is even extending or becoming larger, and we are waking up. And the most important thing is we are so grateful for the support of India in terms of in the support of sustainability, especially esteemed and government of India for funding in whatsoever projects that we come up in terms of sustainability. And although Bhutan is forested with more than 70%, and we are still facing this environment crisis. Maybe the global impact is here, so we cannot escape it. And we are also in very small ways, because this is very small country. We're trying best to especially mitigate this climate change through urban infrastructure, local area plans, and urban policies, and also in terms of management of spring shed, and especially through the local area plans, and also through the community engagement. So the point that I want to make here is that in Bhutan, the current activities that we are taking is, it's like we are going back in time, actually. So we are now trying to study how our forefathers have been living, and we and the Ministry of Culture is finding Ministry of Culture is especially working on and the sustainable infrastructure. How can we build our own infrastructure using local materials? And when they were doing it, they found that the forefathers have been far more better in using the local materials. The challenge at the moment is because of cheap availability of cheaper materials that we import from India, and expensive the expensive nature of extracting local materials. I think the policy is also slowly changing. Maybe in our government is trying to make local material cheaper. For the matter, hope that it happens soon. But at the moment, as Mr. Panwar mentioned, the RCC is here overtaking, especially the city of Thimphu. But as an urban planner, when I was working in one of the remote district of Bhutan, in eastern side of Bhutan, so what we had there, especially in terms of urban policy, is that they are not allowed to use RCC, and as far as possible, they have must use the stone local materials like stone and wood. So that was and also the building structure. So we allow them to construct only the traditional style of building, especially the architect, so that it is relevant to the local available local materials. So that's what we are doing in terms of urban plan, through the urban policy. Small things we are doing, and hope even the feedbacks that we get from the tourists, international tourists, especially from the Western countries, is that the rural areas are they find it much more sustainable because of these initiatives, especially the local materials and traditional architecture. So that's what I meant. We are going back in time. Now we are doing away with all those, trying to do away with this modern infrastructure. I mean, the modern architecture. We are trying to refine it. We are trying to adapt our architecture so that we include most of the traditional features, and so that it is suitable to the local available local materials. And coming to I wanted to make a point regarding the spring shed management, which is very important. And at the moment, we have 7,000 some spring water sources, and 28% of them are drying up. And this has woken us up. So we are through the support of Tara Foundation, the non-profit foundation, and also most importantly, Isimut, we are trying to revive the water sources, protect the water sources, and especially in the urban areas, the local area plans that we plan, uh, and urban planners like me, we do not give much concentration to the natural spring or water sources that we have. So
Pema
what
sir,
we do
just
is,
just to ask a question. I mean,
yes.
could you identify the reasons why 25% of the water sources, I mean, the springs are getting dried up? Is it because of human activity, or it's because of the overall global climate change that you are witnessing? Has such kind of study being done? I can understand what you're doing, but I mean, what are the major reasons you have identified?
Yes, Mr. Banu. As I mentioned earlier, we have enough, I mean, more than enough forest coverage in Bhutan. So yet we are facing that. So what we are suspect, there's no such, I mean, proper studies has been done. But what we are suspecting is the global climate change is here. I mean, the impact is here. So maybe because of that, in Himalayan region, because of that, there is impact in Bhutan. So that's why, and moreover, the specific thing, the local the scenario is that the local people are not does not have local people does not have idea about spring shed management. They only know how to complain about the water scarcity. So the most important thing, that point that I wanted to make is regarding this spring ship management. We are now recently trying to, and we have started trying to empower the local leaders and local people, and through thanks to the gross national happiness concept we had 50 years ago, where we started the community forest management. This has, I mean, wherever there is community forest, this has really, that initiatives have really protected the, I mean, the water sources. We are enhancing that initiatives, because in the mid, we went, I mean, we were not able to enhance that community forest initiatives. Now we are bringing up that initiatives back, so that these water sources are protected and the local people know much better how to do that. And most importantly, we have lots of foresters and the forest management units all over the countries. So the government, the Minister of Forest is educating, training the foresters on spring shed management, because they are the ones who are in the forest, in the forest always there, studying some things. So if they are trained enough, I think the government thinks that it will be beneficial for the whole country in order to manage the spring shed. So yeah, these are the initiatives that we are doing, and the challenge that we are facing in Bhutan currently. So if you have any specific questions, I can answer, because I
Yes,
don't know how to
I'll come to
explain.
you a little later, because I have in fact jotted down a very interesting question, about community. So we would like to more about that. But before that, I think we should jump to second participant, Madam A. Doreen. I mean, you can,
Yeah, hello.
since you're from the
Yeah.
engineering department, I mean, the challenges that you find, in this entire architecture of urbanization. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you for this time. And then, first of all, I would like to say that I'm not an expert in any way, and but I can just talk about what we experience, the challenges that we face in the urban areas. Like you said, sir, earlier, that you have seen the urbanization, how it is happening in our city in Shillong. So the first thing I would say, that nobody expected Shillong to expand like this. So earlier, Shillong was just a small hill station. Even though it was the capital of the, so to say, the whole of Northeast. But it was just a hill station, and the population was very less at the time. So the main culprit, I would say, that it is the population, the growth in population, and the migration of people from the rural areas. Now Shillong is a cosmopolitan city, where we have people from all over. Like, it's not only the people from Meghalaya, but and there were, even from the beginning, most of the central government departments, which they want to place in the start in the northeast, they establish in Shillong. So in that way, the population growth, and then the establishment of institutions like even from earlier. So people from the northeast, students come from all over the northeast to study in Shillong, and now even from the rural areas, most of the students come to study in Shillong. And of course, industrialization is not there in and around Shillong. There's no industrialization is not a problem, but it is the growth in the population, which it was so Shillong is like an unplanned city. It was not planned to be like this. So when there's a migration from the rural areas and then coming to Shillong, and the people who have land, people who have land in Shillong, they start construction so that they can give for rent. And then if people from the lower income group are there. So they rent the place, the buildings. So when they rent, they have to make very, very small, big building to accommodate more number of people, because the rent would be less. So in that way, it's not well planned. It's just that at least in Shillong, we have the Urban Affairs Department, which we have the rules, the bylaws for construction of buildings. So we don't have like very tall buildings. It was restricted to G+3 for RCC buildings. And then earlier in Shillong, even the
just a second,
yeah.
just a second.
Yeah.
Because when I was staying there, I could easily see G+6 also, and G+7 also, and because many of the people would not be knowing this intricate relationship between between what you call the European wards and the indigenous communities driven governance models. Because I was also like really amazed to see the kind of so do you want to comment on that also? How
Actually, that
is that
applies
getting
only.
integrated?
It applies only, that rule applies only to the municipal areas.
Oh,
So
so municipal
municipal
area
areas,
in Shillong is not even
Shillong,
10% of.
yeah.
Okay.
And we even in Shillong, because it's expanding, the satellite towns, so to say, they are beyond the municipal area. So that law doesn't apply to them. But then since now the district council, which is an autonomous body under the 6th schedule, they are also planning to. I think they have already brought a rule even for them also to restrict to have building permissions before anyone could go for construct a building. But till now, it is only the Urban Affairs Department, which is the Meghalaya Urban Development Agency is the jurisdiction is only for the municipal areas. And then I think you must have seen the river which is passing right through Shillong, which is the most polluted river. Like you said, sir, there are no sewage treatment plants, and that also I think it was not planned like this. So during this, whenever we had any discussion, people would say that, oh, that river in the olden days, like we could swim in that river, but now you can't even set foot in the river. The pollution now it is categorized as a priority 1 by the NGT. The most, in the polluted category, it is in priority 1. But I would also advocate that, okay, Shillong before it was very small and there were no buildings close to the river. So all the habitations would be far from the river. And then even though they didn't have a proper, sewers, but then the water in the drains would not even reach the river. Along the way, it would just disappear, infiltrate into the ground, so it doesn't reach the river. But now all the drains are CC drains, and all the drains from the whole city are going into the river. And then more than that also, the houses are coming up to the banks of the river, there was no rule, I think, to stop that. So it is very difficult now even if the urban affairs department, I think they wanted to shift those people, but then the people went to court and all that, and then it becomes very difficult. Then now, after the NGT order was there to that all these rivers, to bring back the quality of the rivers up to to improve the water quality of the water in these rivers. But then when they wanted to set up STP, again there is the problem of land. And the land tenure system in Meghalaya is very peculiar. The land belongs to the people. So the government cannot just take the land, and then when all the buildings have come up, so how will you take even the roads also? You cannot get bigger roads because the land already belongs to the people. And we are facing a lot of problem, even though even our department, we are a part of that river rejuvenation committee. We are members. We keep on discussing that, and they are trying to do something else because there's no land to set up the STP, because it was not planned before. If it had been done before, like 30-40 years back, then it could have been done, but now it is not possible anymore. So they are just setting up these some treatment plant in the drains, across the drains. They're doing that under various schemes by the Urban Affairs Department to treat at least the drains which are going into the river. But even that also they could do only in the municipal area. But this river comes, the major part of the river comes from other, which is non-municipal area. So that something else have to be done for that. And this river also goes to Umiam Lake. It is the catchment of Umiam Lake. And it is not only the liquid waste, it is the solid waste also is a problem, because solid waste also is dumped by people into the river. I don't know why, even though they try to, there is a door-to-door garbage collection, which we do that. It is happening, but still there are people, maybe, I don't know, who are dumping these waste into the river, which they solid waste. That is also a problem. And then I think that is a problem everywhere. It is not only in our state. Recently, when I went to Kalimpong, while coming back, we just dropped to just see that dam, that lower dam, Tista lower dam, I think it is. And we just saw there that the garbage had come and collected just at the dam, so coming from the catchment area. So that is like I said, it is a problem. And then the land tenure system, the population, and then earlier we used to say that we have these Assam type buildings, like the house which I'm living now is an Assam type building where we use wood. But then now it is very uneconomical, so people have to go for RCC buildings. You will not get a good, wood it'll be very expensive, and they would not even get a good quality wood for construction. So naturally people go for RCC buildings, and if they have to construct 3-4 stories building, then they are going for RCC buildings. But because Assam type buildings, earlier we used to have only a 1 story or 2 story, maximum 2 story we would construct. And then coming to and another thing, the problem also is because tourism, we cannot control that. We cannot control the coming of tourists. Our state also depends on tourism, because the people, their livelihoods also depend on tourism. With the coming of tourists, they can improve their livelihood. And maybe Bhutan, they have been able to control, like what I heard, they can control, but it is not possible to control here in Meghalaya. Then springs, coming to springs, I would say that earlier, like 30-40, when we were kids, the whole of Shillong was, the water supply was only from springs. We have the Lom Shillong Peak Range, where the spring water from there is they supply for the water from the springs. It supplies to the whole of Shillong. Even now, we still have in the municipal areas, but then with the growth of population, the government had to go for a reservoir. But these springs are I would say that Meghalaya being it is a plateau. It is a plateau, and it is, though we are situated in the northeast, it is established that we are not part of the Himalayas. We are part of the Deccan Plateau. So it is a hard rock area, and it being a plateau, all the rivers and the streams in Meghalaya, the source is from springs. There is no doubt about it, because no other river is coming from another state into Meghalaya. We don't have glaciers. So all the rivers and streams in Meghalaya are, the origin of all these rivers are from springs. So even the topic of springs was not discussed until very recently. This discussion on the importance of springs is very recent in our state. So our department, we, under the National Hydrology Project, which is a World Bank funded project under the Ministry of Jal Shakti, we started to do a spring inventory. And we could map only 9,155 springs in the state. So after mapping these springs, I'll say that we have not mapped all the springs, because when we generated the first order streams in Meghalaya, in GIS, we found that there are about, say, 20,000 streams, first order streams. So if there are 20,000 first order streams, there should be 20,000 springs. So, but then the challenge is that these springs, they originate, the origin of these springs, we could map only those which were in and around the habitations, near the villages, where people could the villages could identify and lead our people who are doing the mapping. But then there would be many springs which would be in the remote areas or in the jungles, where one has to travel long distances on foot to find that source, because springs are very small in size. So, but then we have started that work, and we want to continue with that work because spring shed management, again, we are not experts in that, but we know that especially Meghalaya being a hard rock area, all the aquifers are in the faults, because of the geology of the state. So it is not how to delineate the spring sheds. That is what we want to go forward, and we are in contact with the ministry. And then we know that there are institutes like NIH Roorkee who have done, I think in Himachal, they have done some study which how to delineate the spring shed. Then only we can, because we do, spring shed is totally different from a watershed. So maybe Bhutan or Himachal, they have done more work on this. But for us, it is just the beginning. But we would like to go forward in this because, so to say, to that we still have to study like how these springs are behaving. Whether it's just a general talk that the springs are drying up, but there are no data on that. But we want to continue with the collection of data to see the behavior of these springs, like the discharge, whether it is really dry, it is really decreasing, or it's just a saying. There would be because of human interventions in the catchment of these in the catchments, or maybe it is just because of climate change, global climate change, that the behavior. But we can do that because we are going forward, and we will continue with this work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Doreen. If we do not have questions to each other, then I will pose questions to both of you, and then probably you can also, interact with Doreen, ma'am. You can
Sure,
ask
sure.
questions to
Yeah,
Pema
sure.
Sab, and likewise, yeah. I think Pema Sab, your talk was very fascinating, and I got fascinated about because you brought in the whole question of community. When you said community management, community plans, in the whole process of planning in Bhutan, and uh, so that, I mean, can you just dwell more on that? What are the processes? Is it a structured process under some statutory form, or is it just a convention or a precedence that you just continue ahead? That's the first thing. And the second one is, you also mentioned about, some of the projects that are being funded by India. So could you just mention a few of them, and how are these projects helping? I know Isimod, because Isimod and we're doing together something on in the month of September. I mean, Asian Conference would also be a part and parcel of that. So it's more to do with Himalayan sustainability. So that's happening in Delhi. So if you could just speak about that. And uh, but it's really nice, the whole integration that you brought about the happiness index, and happiness index not in Xylo, or not just a subjective element, but very objectively defining it with community forest initiatives. So if you could just dwell on that, because I know someone who was responsible for working in the happiness index, and now is a professor in Chulni University. So we are trying that's in Himachal Pradesh, by the way. So together we are just trying to do something for our state as well. So if you could just, this is the third point. And uh, uh, the spring management also, because you mentioned about and if you could also mention about the challenges, what are the most precipitating challenges that you are witnessing, the whole in this whole uh, umbrella of sustainable urbanization. uh, are you think it's beyond the scope and space, both spatio-temporal, or you think you are able to because it's extremely difficult. We know what climate change is, and the things that are happening are even going beyond our capacities to intervene. So to you, and Ma'am Doreen, I think I should ask questions to you as well, if you don't mind. Then you can interact amongst yourselves also. uh, I mean, you really laid but the whole magnificently about how things, I mean, especially about the springs. But I did not find in this process of spring management, where are the people? When you say spring management, you talked about the Roorkee, you talked about specialists, but where are the people? Because to me, if we have to learn from Bhutan, then the communities are at the core. We do not find that process. So are you creating that process, or you think that process is like, or you're completely oblivious, or how can we structure that entire thing? And uh, I think one area which you should venture into, and that's come from our experience, don't go for big STPs. Why should you not try, decentralized fecal sludge management techniques like we did in Leh? Because large STPs generally don't function well, and given the experience that we have across the countries, and space is another big impediment that you have. So why should you not plan, more decentralized waste management techniques, which could be one of the way forward? Yeah, so I think we can start with Pema sir.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, let me elaborate on the international initiatives that Bhutan received uh, in terms of mitigating, especially in terms of spring shed management. And recently, particularly the SIMOT is involved in trainings and workshops for the local people. I mean, especially the leaders and those who are involved in the policy and decision making processes. And some of the activities that till now they have been taking as reshaping, of abandoned terraces, so that the discharge happens quickly, and also planting trees, and also constructing pits and shallow ponds on the slope to improve the discharge, and also tapping, especially in the urban areas, so tapping the runoff water from the road and divert it to the recharge areas. So those are the some initiatives the ICMOD has been carrying out, and the most impactful is in and conducting trainings and workshops to the local leaders so that they pass those knowledge and the skills to the local people. And other three questions regarding the community engagement and happiness, and these are ingrained in very much in GNH gross national happiness values that we now it is 50 years old GNH, and all the policies, the development activities have been based on GNH, and we very much uphold these values when we think about the development activities, and the very reason is the birth of this change is to mitigate climatic problems, and to enforce the sustainability. The initial purpose of this change was that, and I think it is a decade old now since the community empowerment or engagement in addressing the sustainability has occurred. I think it's just a decade old. And the main thing that GNH has is the community vitality. So which is very important in order for a small country to thrive. I think all the communities should come together. This is what we believe. And even in resolving the international problems or also national problems, I think community must come together. And that is the concept that the government brought in to especially manage the forest natural resources, especially the forest and the community forest, in keeping in view the water scarcity, and also in keeping in view the the climate change happening in the international countries. So the question that you asked about how challenging it is, or is it possible or doable for Bhutan to resolve this climatic, the problems. I think as per the reports, and as per what the elders, as per the policymakers have been saying, I think it's not impossible to solve all the problems. It's possible to solve the climate change problem in the international countries happening, and global climate change happening. But what we are trying to do is through GNH, we are trying to, from this very small country, we are trying to set an example. Okay, in this small country, we are doing like that. If we replicate in the international, in the larger context, I think it is doable. So this is what we are trying to do through the GNH values. Hope I have answered all the questions.
Thank you. And ma'am, you can go ahead, and if you have a question to Pema sir, probably you can ask it later, and then Pema sir can also pose the same. Yeah.
Okay. Regarding the spring management, like I said earlier, we have just started the work. The first work that we did was just the inventory of mapping of the springs, because that was not done. It was not done before. Well, first we had to do we had to map the springs, and the spring shed management will come later, because then we have to monitor the behavior of the springs. In that, for that that is the next step that we're going forward. And even the monitoring of the springs also has to, we want to engage the community, like the
But
people
I
of
think even in mapping, the community role is essential, because even in mapping the springs across the state, don't you think that the role of the community is very
Yes,
essential
yes.
in
It
that?
was even though it was the people of our department who had gone to those villages, but then we had to engage the villagers for identifying the springs and going along with them to see how we measure the discharge, how we record the. I mean, because we had to do that. But then, even if we have to monitor the behavior of the springs, then it has to be done by the community, because we cannot send our people again and again to those areas. So we are planning to do that, so that later. But in some areas which we had identified to take up some intervention work, that also will be done with the community. So like plantation or works which can be done by the community will be given to them, except like engineering structures that can will be done by the department. That we are taking up one project with Brahmaputra board. And then but this is an ongoing process. Like I said earlier, we have just started. It's we are yet to go forward in this. And now even everybody is aware of the importance of the springs in the state, so we are engaging with other departments like the MBDA. Also, we are working together, and then because other departments also are taking up their initiatives also, like soil and water conservation. They do the afforestation, the tree plantation and all that, and then they do these contour trenches. Other departments also are working on this. It's not only our department. And then regarding the ETPs, I mean the STPs, ETPs, that is also being done by Urban Affairs Department. I think, like you said, it should be decentralized. That's what they are doing now also, because these STPs, it could not be done in our state. So they, even that fecal sludge management, then like the treating the water in the drains, those are all decentralized. They are doing the work if we are not involved in the work.
Thank you. So
So,
I
but
think, yeah, please, you can just.
yeah, but I would like to hear from you, sir, about the work done in Himachal Pradesh. I think they have done work done for springs was done even early.
Well, I don't think I'm the right person to comment on, because I myself was not engaged in this process. But we have some good work done in spring shed management, but not in Himachal. But Uttarakhand is better. They have this whole process of community engagement. We have still gone by the conventional method of watershed management. But if you honestly ask me, ma'am, you will find we are in a serious crisis. And the crisis is also because of our very strong integration to the market, unlike what I find in Northeast, because our integration to the market, especially in the whole production process, because we Apple is one of our principal crops, and we produce some 6,000 crore economy. That's Apple. Then we have off-season vegetables. So this has brought in a very major crisis, because there is also a shift and transition taking place from the conventional form of production process to a very advanced form of what we call high density spur varieties in Apple that cannot survive even for 2 days without water.
Okay.
So water is becoming, and the rich peasant who has already shifted to these high density have started, because 90-95% of our water used to come from surface, so it was surface water basically. But now we're trying to dig bore wells underneath, and that is creating a situation where some of the springs that have never dried even in summers are now hardly seen even during the rainy season. So there is a serious crisis. I think we need to relook at our entire developmental trajectory. But unlike Bhutan, which is a sovereign federal state, in our Himalayan states, another big challenge happens to be, the whole question of financial integration, because the state, and probably we require lots and lots of conversation on that. Already there's an 80,000 crore debt that the state is passing through. Generating resources through tourism happens to be one of the drivers. Big hydropower projects happens to be one of the drivers, because that's where we generate our revenues. Tourism, unleashing tourism happens to be. So, in fact, it's a quagmire, if you honestly ask me. Having said that, that doesn't mean that the communities are not coming forward. Communities are coming forward, but these are like very few examples. The broad narrative is that's a serious challenge. The broad narrative is that because the drivers of the economy, the production process happens to be, where we generate more wealth, where we generate more revenue, and unfortunately, we're not coming back from there right now. So it's a serious challenge. Yeah. And that is why you find urbanization also taking place at a rapid pace. So the moment we have road, there's an urban settlement coming up in the northwestern Himalayas.
That's true, sir. And this migration from the rural areas to the urban areas also, it's not just because they had to due to for earning their livelihood, but I think
No,
people
that
they don't work.
primarily because of that. Livelihood
Yeah,
is one,
primarily.
and then also education. Better
Yeah,
education
education.
facilities,
Mm,
health facilities. Though Himachal is quite an inverse state because we are next to Kerala in India. In the human development indices, but we can
mm,
also see this whole gravitating towards over centralization of movement of people, of finances. So that trend continues even in Himachal Pradesh. It's a challenge, honestly speaking. It's a serious challenge.
because farmers would leave their fields. They want to do agriculture because it's labor intensive. And coming
Ma'am,
to
I
the
would say
city, they
no. It depends on the remuneration of the agriculture. For example, in the belt where we grow apples, you would find
mm,
people go back because the orchards are remunerative. But in your
yeah,
conventional form of agriculture, people don't
yeah,
go back because they can't sustain, and we
yeah,
have a fairly high levels of education standards. So
mm,
because of our strong investment in social infrastructure, right from 70s when we got statehood. Uh,
mm,
so so they're not going back. Only those where you have remuneration coming up from the agriculture production process, you find
mm.
people going back. Else they would go for government jobs, they will go for some other tertiary tourism, but not in the primary sector, that's agriculture production.
Yes, that's true because agriculture and the benefits that they get from the agriculture production, agricultural crops and horticultural crops is totally there's a wide gap because
Yeah.
we do have
Yes.
people like in the border areas where people grow fruits like oranges or other
Pineapples, I saw your pineapples. Yeah, I saw you.
pineapples.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the I mean the livelihood is much better. They earn more rather than the this like paddy growing paddy or something like that.
Prem, so why is urbanization also at a very rapid pace in Bhutan? Can you just tell me the drivers? What are the drivers of urbanization in? Because and your former mayor Dorje Sahab is a good old friend of mine. We've traveled together many places. Who's the mayor of Thimphu? Huh? Yeah. So
Uh,
how is he doing these days? Yeah, I don't know. Even I haven't met him since long. Anyway, please. So what do you
I
think are the
think,
drivers of?
yeah, the main driver I think is the rural urban migration because of especially now Thimphu is the only capital in Bhutan,
Sure.
and all the services, I mean the educational services, all the economic services, the government level services are all centered here in Bhutan, I mean Thimphu. And the rural areas are not that much developed, and also because of the steep terrain, agriculture is really hard in the remote areas of Bhutan, and that's why people they they wanted to find, I mean, easier jobs in capital city, and that's why most of the people are now have been migrating to the urban areas to find some jobs, especially those young educated people. So now, because of this, we now since a decade ago we have been facing the we say gungdong, the empty houses in the
Oh,
rural
okay.
areas. So people
Okay.
are leaving to the town areas. So these are the scenario right now here in Bhutan. So now we are trying to revive, I mean, the mechanized agriculture in rural areas through Ministry of Agriculture and Forest.
Okay. Okay.
Hope it works out.
Great. So thank you so much. I think that's all time. We haven't exceeded our time. Pradyut, are you there? So I think I must thank both our panelists, and I think it's been a
Okay,
lovely
so
conversation. But
yeah.
Pradyut,
So thank you, dear Mr. Panwar, Mr. Pema, and Doreen ma'am, for your valuable time for joining us and being part of this very important and a timely conversation. We hope this small conversation sets the tone for making our cities not sustainable, if not smart. So, with this, we thank our viewers watching this episode. And for more such interesting conversation, do follow our channel. Thank you so much.